she and I will be presenting that part. We had planned for Brittany Blanchard, who is one of the Klein research librarians, to be here to help out with that section, but she got injured just this morning, and so Kelly and I are going to do our best to fill in. She has a particular set of knowledge, and we're going to do our best to fill in and follow through with any questions that you might have that we can't answer that we'll direct to her. And then the last half hour will be Kelly up again, who will be about thesis and dissertation processes. Help yourselves, please, to something to eat and drink at the back, and replenish as often, because, you know, it's just us. And so when we're done, then it'll just go on to somebody else. So let's use it. Take some home, too. If you haven't had a chance to register, you can either face your iPhone or I guess just iPhones up here to the QR code and register, or you can use the little piece of paper at your table to register. And registering just helps us get information about what programs you all are in, helps us plan for next year, that sort of thing. So if I've gotten everything, Megan, I'll let you take over from here. Thank you.
Come to the computer. All right, hi everyone. So I am Megan Bechtel, and I am the program coordinator in charge of petitions and graduations for all master's and doctoral students. So we're going to start by talking about, that'll work, graduation. So something that a lot of people understandably get confused about is the difference between graduation and commencement. So NAU views these as two separate things. So graduation is the completion of your degree requirements and the posting of your degree to your transcript. Commencement is just that public ceremony of celebrating academic achievement. So if you want, and we'll talk about commencement at the very end just briefly, if for some reason that you are graduating, so finishing your degree requirements in one term, but want to participate in a commencement, so let's say you're graduating in summer and you want to participate in spring, you just need to send me an email at graduation so we can make sure you're eligible and take the necessary steps to make that happen for you. Something to keep in mind with the graduation application is that you need to submit this for each program that you're completing at NAU. So if you're doing a master's degree and a graduate certificate, you have to apply twice, once for the master's, once for the certificate, because that's the only way it's going to enable me to post those to your transcripts and put that credential up there. So not a whole bunch of students have additional certificates, but if you do, please do keep that in mind. So before you start the graduation application process, the first thing that you need to do is complete what's called a program of study. And a program of study is essentially a Word document that maps out every single requirement for your degree and gives you columns to fill out information of when you took the course, what grade you earned, and it really keeps you on track for the completion of all of your degree requirements. There are programs of study available on our website, and that's what the link is at the top of the page, for each academic year, because curriculum changes do happen. So students can use any program of study from the time they start their program until graduation to account for any changes that might occur. So once you get your program of study up and ready, what you'll do, and we'll look at it on the next slide, is you're going to fill out the particular details of the course you took, the number of units, the grade. If you already know the grade, you can leave it blank if you know it's a future course. And you definitely want to register for your final term if that's possible before filling this out. Because if you don't and something happens where you're going to be taking another course, you won't have to go back and edit prior versions for us, so it'll have the most accurate information for your last term. So here's an example of that program. So this is just an example of social work. And you'll see it has the 1920 year, so that's the academic catalog it's looking at. And it's going to list every single degree requirement that is required for the degree. And you'll see all of these variety of columns over to the right. So normally you'll just list the semester you took it, the year, units, grade. And if something happens, so let's say instead of SW555 in this example, you took SW500 and your department approved that, you're going to list that in that replacement course column. And that's going to indicate to me that your department has looked at this, they approved this substitution, and we're good to go. Another really key point of information that you'll want to fill out is this code system in the very last column. So if you have transfer credit, or if you have credits that you earned, let's say as an undergraduate student, but they weren't used towards your undergrad degree, you just took them during that time, that's how you're going to indicate it to me, so we can make sure everything on your transcript flows correctly and that all of the policies are being followed appropriately. And that's something that you can do with your academic advisor. So once your program of study is filled out, what you'll do is you're going to send it for signatures. So your advisor has to sign this document, and your department chair or director has to sign this document. And it'll list everybody at the bottom of the page in case there's a grad coordinator maybe that the department wants to sign and that kind of thing. So what will happen is your advisor will sign it and then forward it on to your department chair, and then once those signatures are on the form, or there's an electronic signature listed, they're going to send it back to you. And that document is what you use when you apply for graduation. So this last step of applying really should only take a few minutes to take care of. Really, you're just verifying your diploma information and hitting submit. So to walk through that process, what you'll do is you'll log into your NAU LUI account. You will go to the right-hand side, and you'll see that milestones box. And it should say Program of Study Master's, Program of Study Doctoral, Program of Study Certificate, whatever program you're completing. Mm-hmm. When you hit the Details tab, it'll, again, make you choose what specific program that this program of study is linked to. So in this example, the student is doing an educational leadership degree, so she's going to click on the Program of Study Master's option. Now, I wanted to point something out on this page because I do get a lot of questions about it. This status that says not completed, don't worry about that at all. You can ignore it. That's just an internal tracking device that I use when I finally review your graduation application and has no bearing on the application process. So, so you can just ignore that, click the link, and then you'll be able to use the Add button to upload your program of study. Now, you can upload as many documents as you'd like in here. So if your program of study comes, let's say it's 3 pages and it's 3 separate documents, that's fine, just upload all 3. If maybe your department has sent you an email saying that they approve, let's say your advisor does it, they send you an email saying, yes, your program of study is approved, you can upload that in here so I can piece everything together when I'm reviewing your record. All right, so once you upload that document, it can take up to an hour. Oh yeah, please.
I was wondering about the program of study. We only need to upload it when it's completed, and I'm guessing that what you need out of the program of study is to show that we've finished all the units that we're supposed to be finishing?
Yes, either completed and enrolled in. So what about dates and deadlines a little later in the presentation, but usually you apply for graduation this semester before you're actually graduating, so you won't know what grades you have or anything like that, and that's perfectly fine. It is just an indication of exactly what courses you took for the degree in order to graduate. Okay. Yeah. All right, so the once the program of study is uploaded into the system, it can take up to an hour before the system will realize it's there. The system refreshes every 10 minutes after the hour, so depending on when you upload it in that time frame is how long you'll have to wait to take the next step. The next step itself is going back into your LUI account, and under this other academics drop-down menu, you'll see the Apply for Graduation link. And then it's going to ask you what program you want to apply for graduation, and you're going to hit Apply for Graduation again. And then it's going to walk you through a variety of questions. So you're going to confirm how you want your name listed on your diploma, and that can be in any way you want. This doesn't affect your actual LUI record. So if you want your name to appear differently than it does on your official record, you know, maybe without your middle name, with your middle name, you can certainly do that. You'll also confirm your address for where you want the diploma sent to. If you're a doctoral student, you're going to confirm your title and your committee chair's name, because that will be printed in the commencement program. And once that's done, then you'll verify some information and terms and agreement, or terms and conditions, and then you'll hit submit, and you'll be charged a $35 application fee, and that's going to be automatically assigned to your LUI account. It's not going to be due at that exact moment. Student accounts will assign a separate date. Usually it's about a month out for when that needs to be paid. Finally, you'll get a confirmation email. You and your advisor will receive that, confirming that you submitted it for the particular term. Yeah.
So if we already got that, that means we already submitted our. Okay, great.
Yeah, ahead of the game. Excellent. All right, so once you submit your graduation application, like we were saying earlier, you're doing this a term before you're actually going to graduate. What happens is your application will sit in the system until the actual graduation term starts. And then what happens is I look at every single graduation application for every student, and I match up the program of study to the transcript and make sure that everything lines up. I also make sure that the signatures are there and just make sure that everything's in order and nothing's going to prevent your graduation. If I find that there's some type of issue, I'll certainly reach out to you. I'll be emailing your NAU email address and in most cases copying your advisor, just clarifying what needs to be fixed. Most cases it's you're missing a signature, or maybe you thought you were enrolling in course X and you enrolled in course Y, and we just need to make sure that that's approved. So keep an eye out for any emails during your graduation term. So students that are pre-approved are placed in the pending status, and in Louis, I think it reads needs to finish pending work. And what that means is I've reviewed your application, nothing is wrong, you've enrolled in courses, and we're just waiting on those final grades to post. Some students, if you took an 8-week course, it might happen a little, it might not make too much sense because all of your grades have already posted and it's still saying pending, but that's just the status that we use for all students for consistency. So if you've applied for graduation and you discover that you're not going to get your thesis done, you're not going to get your dissertation done, or what have you, the appropriate thing to do is to contact me at graduation@nau.edu and ask that your application be withdrawn. Once I withdraw your application, I'll activate you for enrollment so you can go forward and finish whatever you need to, and then you would just need to go through this entire process again to apply for whatever term you're going to now be graduating for. That does include paying another application fee because you're submitting another application. So once everything is done, and I've awarded your degree and posted to your transcript, and we'll talk about timelines in a second, the diploma itself will be mailed to you, to that address you listed in your application. And it usually comes about 4 weeks after the end of the term.
So Megan, can you explain if they don't withdraw their application, they will not be able to enroll in the next term? Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm. In most cases. So with multi-term enrollment going on now, sometimes the system will allow you to enroll in future coursework, but in general, you do have to withdraw your application in order for me to reactivate you as an active student, because once you apply for graduation, after that term ends, it's going to think you graduated and that you've terminated your active status. So by withdrawing that, I can get you activated again so you can continue in your program. So as I mentioned before, definitely monitor your NAU email until you receive your diploma. If anything happens at any point between now and then, that's how we have to contact you. So please make sure you do that regularly. Okay, so deadlines and timelines. So in general, applications are always due on May 1st or December 1st. So for spring 2020, it's the 2nd because the 1st happens to be a Sunday. But really the most important date that I want you all to focus on is the one in the red box, which is the end of term and conferral date. So in order to have your degree awarded, in order for me to press the button to say, yes, degree completed, you have to have absolutely everything done by that date. So you have to have all of your coursework done. You have to everything for your thesis and dissertation, including the final upload into ProQuest, which Kelly will talk about. If you are doing an internship, all of your internship hours have to be done by that date. And any other thing that is relevant to your degree has to be completed. If it's even completed one day after, so for fall, if it's completed on December 14th, I cannot award your degree. And you would have to postpone until the following semester. So please keep that in mind as you're coming to the end of your graduation term, that unfortunately we can't have any wiggle room with that date because it's ABOR policy, it's university policy, so please make sure you're meeting that deadline.
And that would include any incompletes that you might have had. Those have to be resolved by that date as well.
Yeah. So once the end of term date passes, so let's talk about fall 2019. So the 13th passes. What happens is the registrar's office will give your instructors about a week and a half to turn in all of their grades for the fall semester. So we'll wait for them to complete that process. It'll end on the 24th of December is when that's going to be completed. And then the registrar's office will give me permission to start awarding degrees. So I will not be able to award any degree until December 30th at the earliest. Once I receive that permission, I have to go through every single graduation application again and make sure everybody earned passing grades. So it does take me usually a few weeks to get that process done. I do prioritize my awarding by department, because I know most of the health sciences are waiting on licensure, and most of College of Education is waiting to be able to teach maybe a week after this date. So I do my best to get all of those done as soon as possible, but I am just one human, so it does take some time. Yes?
How many graduates do you have that read section like that?
Graduation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, how many people are you cycling through?
Right, so in the fall I usually have about 500 students. In the spring it's about 900, and summer is about 300. So it does take a while.
Do you consider the public health part of the health profession cohort?
Probably, yes. I think that's the college you belong to. Yeah.
Is it College of Health and Human Services?
Yeah. Yep. Perfect. And then degree posting, right? I put 4 weeks on there, but it usually doesn't take that long. I usually can get the majority of them done within a week, and then anybody that has some kind of issue going on, maybe grade hasn't changed yet, takes about another week to take care of. So it really doesn't take quite that long, but it is a manual process, so do be aware that it will take longer than expected. All right, so talking just very briefly about commencement. So there's a whole department dedicated to commencement, and once you apply for graduation, you'll be included on their mailing list, so you'll receive communications about when to buy things and when to show up, things of that nature, but this is just kind of a little synopsis. So for students who are graduating in the fall 2019 term, so this December, make sure that you order your regalia by November 18th, so you don't have to pay additional rush fees to get it to you. You can go to this website, nau.edu/commencement, to see how to actually get your regalia and go through that process. So for master's students, there's no RSVP process you go through. You just show up if you want to participate in commencement. It's all handled the day of. Doctoral students, because they're hooded on stage and their mentor, the Graduate College has a little more involvement with them, and we do an RSVP with those students, and we'll send that out about a month out before the ceremony. So the ceremonies themselves are organized by academic college. So each college will participate in a specific day, and that website will show you what that is. A point of confusion that does happen often is with the NAU online. So even if you are completing all of your degree requirements online, it doesn't necessarily mean you belong to that college. So the only master's degree that belong to the online college are the Masters of Administration, Masters of Organizational Leadership, Global Business Administration, and Personalized Learning programs. So for example, if you're in an ed leadership degree and you're completing it all online, you still belong to the College of Education and would participate with that college. So for the actual ceremony itself, there's no type of ticketing system that happens. We do ask that students bring no more than 10 guests with them, just to allow for plenty of seating for all of the graduates. I think there's about 2,000 students that come to each ceremony. Come to all of the ceremonies. So that is the one request that we make. And please be aware that there's a clear bag policy. So if any of your guests do come, make sure that they're aware of that and that they won't be able to bring in big bags or purses or things of that nature. Doors do open 90 minutes before the start of the ceremony, so if people want to come early and get good seats, they're more than welcome to do that. So all students, regardless of what degree you're earning, should arrive about an hour before the start time. So when you arrive, all students are going to be directed to the field, and there will be plenty of volunteers running around down there, and you're going to be seated by department. So you're not seated alphabetically by name or anything. It's just a big row of students in your same department. And then on your seat, there's going to be a name card where you're going to fill out your name and how it's phonetically said. And that's what you're going to carry up with you on stage and hand it to an announcer to have your name called. So that's why you don't have to RSVP as a master's student, because anybody can come, sit down, fill out that card, and walk up stage and shake hands and be congratulated. Doctoral students, again, are a little different because there's a little more that goes on with them. So in the RSVP, we'll send out all of this information, but the Graduate College, Kelly and I will have a table there, and we will check doctoral students in and have them sit in a particular order to make sure that the hooding goes correctly. But everything else will be organized when you arrive, and everyone will have a great party. So.
And I want to add something. I'm the person that helps get the rows up and move them up to go up onto the stage for the master's students. And what we find often is that somebody has their cell phone and maybe a smallish purse, their program maybe even. And then they decide, oh, I don't want to take that up on stage, or I want to take only my phone up on stage, which I'm going to put in my pocket because I got to shake hands, right, and receive something. So I need to have my hands free. What happens then is they either leave it there or they take it up with them, which we don't recommend. But when you come circling back around, you don't come back to the same row or the same seat at all. So it's our advice that you have something smallish that you can wear under your robe so that when you go up on stage, you're fine. It's one of those purses, right, that can fit underneath your robe. It's tiny, tiny. Or don't bring a purse at all, ladies. And then or know that you're going to be coming back to a different row, and then you'll have to go and get your stuff, right? So that's a big issue every semester. Just kind of keep that in mind. Help spread the word with your friends, because that becomes an issue. What do I do with my stuff? And they don't want to leave it because it's their cell phone, which is expensive, right? Or their purse or whatever. And so just kind of keep that in mind. Take it all with you, or don't bring anything at all, because you don't come back to the same row.
Sure, and another option is you can leave up with the guests that are coming with you. Just hand it over to them.
Do we need to have clear bags as well?
Yes.
What if it's under your robe? No one's looking under your robe.
True.
I have never been asked to lift my robe up to check if I have a clear bag under there or not. But
Yeah. But if you have a lot of stuff, it's probably a good idea just to make sure there's no delays. Yeah.
Is there only a spring commencement? Or is there...
No, so there's a spring and a fall commencement. Yeah, so how it works at the graduate level is that anybody graduating over summer or fall will participate in the fall commencement, and then anybody graduating in spring will participate in spring. And each will have designated ceremonies for your academic college. Perfect. Okay, well that's all I have. Does anybody have any particular questions about commencement or graduation? Perfect. Well, if you need me, so graduation is my email address that I check daily, every minute of every day, essentially. So just let me know if you have any questions and we can figure things out.
okay, in our next segment, we'll be talking about copyright and embargo. And there's some particular topics that we're going to cover. We see some of you are leaving. We hope you'll stay. This rest of the information is
They have a
important,
class.
but I do recognize everybody has their own schedule. So these are the topics we're going to cover today. Intellectual property terms, a little bit of historical information about where these laws came from, how to use copyrighted materials. So whether you are writing a thesis or dissertation, you are likely making reference to copyrighted materials in whatever sort of writing that you're doing for your degree. And so related to that is what happens if that document that you're making reference to or whatever is in the public domain? How do you acquire permission? Well, hey, what about fair use? I think I can talk about that or use that in my work because it's fair use. And infringement then, what happens when the law is violated, right? We'll also talk about the acquisition, registering, and ownership of copyright. And then at the very end, NAU's processes related to these topics. So before we get started, we thought we'd go over some basic terms: trademark, trade secret, patent, and copyright. So a trademark then is any word, name, symbol, or design, or a combination of those used in commerce to identify and distinguish the goods of one manufacturer seller from those of another and to indicate the source of the goods. A trade secret could be a formula, a practice, process, design, an instrument, a pattern, commercial method, or compilation of information not generally known or reasonably ascertainable by others by which a business can obtain an economic advantage over competitors or customers. It is defined by a state statute, and it derives independent economic value from being unknown, right? If you don't know the formula of some sort of pizza sauce, maybe, then that gives it value, right? A patent is an exclusive right granted for an invention. And so one says, oh, I know what an invention is. This is the official definition. It's a product or a process that provides, in general, a new way of doing something or offers a new technical solution to a problem. Copyright is a legal right that grants the creator of an original work exclusive rights to determine whether and under what conditions that original work may be used by others. And so I think it's helpful when you talk about these terms to think about what they protect. So a trademark protects source identifications, like a brand, a slogan, logos, a design, or even a scent, like in the case of perfume, right? Or a color, maybe. A trade secret, then, protects valuable secret information. There are ideas that must be kept confidential, and others to whom they are disclosed must also keep them confidential. A patent, maybe if you're in some of the STEM fields, maybe this pertains to you. Protect new inventions. And then an invention can be a device. We kind of went over the definition already. There's a particular way to get a patent, right? And then a copyright protects original textual works and visual or artistic expressions. And some of you in the fields of the creative writing program, this may apply to you. So I thought it would also be helpful to talk about the differences. So do you really know what a patent versus a copyright is? Well, let's take a look. So patent will refer to an invention, but copyrights refer to an expression of an idea, such as an artistic work. So it's really important to know that distinction because the law is a little bit different. Well, what about a patent and a trademark? So a patent prevents others from making or selling an invention, but a trademark will protect the words, phrases, symbols, logos, or other devices used to identify the source of the goods or services from usage by other competitors. What about a copyright and a trademark? So both of those will offer intellectual property protection, but a copyright is geared toward literary and artistic works, such as books and videos. That's why I mentioned the creative writing program, because many of the students in that program are writing some sort of literary work. Versus a trademark protects items that help define a company brand, such as its logo. And then this question gets asked as well. So what about a copyright of expression of facts and then the facts themselves? Let's say those facts themselves are data, for example, right? So copyright of an expression of facts is potentially copyrightable, but the facts themselves are generally not copyrightable unless until you get into databases where we're talking about the selection and arrangement of data, right? Those can have copyrights, but the data itself is generally not copyrightable. So let's see if you can put it into practice. You have this image. On the left side, you have these terms. On the right side, you have the example. See if you can match it up. I'll give you a minute. We got to keep it interactive, like you can't fall asleep.
I know these.
Do you know the answer, Nathan? You don't. So this is how you should have matched it up. The patent would be the manufacturer structure of the can, right? So you see it slants down a little bit from the top. Trademark is then the Coca-Cola Classic. The trade secret is the formula, right? So what combination of liquids and chemicals went into that particular liquid. And the copyright then is the ad copy on the can. So it's, you know, the design, it's written in cursive, that kind of thing. So to talk a little bit about the origins of intellectual property, we go to the Constitution. So the historical context for the laws relate to Article 1, Section 8, which says, to promote the progress of science and useful arts by securing for limited times to authors and inventors the exclusive right to their respective writings and discoveries. And so that is where everything relates to this particular article and section when we're talking about copyright law. It relates to Title 17. It's the portion of the United States Code that outlines the copyright law. It was codified into positive law in 1947, and this was surprising to me. The latest version is from December 2016. And in that code, there's some pieces that are the most important pieces, and we've highlighted these here for you. So when we talk about original works of authorship, it means that it's created by a human author, so not by a machine, right? And that it has a minimal degree of creativity, which means that data can't be copyrighted. A database cannot be copyrighted like we already saw, but a work of art can be, right? It has a minimal degree of creativity to be able to fit into that portion of the definition. The other piece that's important is this phrase here, fixed in a tangible medium of expression. It's captured by or with authority of the author. It's perceived, reproduced, or communicated, and this means that the material has been in some tangible form, such as it's written down, it's been videotaped, basically it's captured in some type of media. It's not just something that was said out loud, right? So what can be copyrighted? All of these things can be copyrighted. And one thing that struck me as interesting that I hadn't ever considered was vessel hulls. Go figure. So interesting. I bet a lot of you thought of these already as being copyrightable. Maybe you didn't think of fabric, but fabric fits there too. So then, how do we use copyrighted materials? And what's this whole notion of the public domain? So many of you are using copyrighted materials in your theses and dissertations. Also other works that you might be writing for your classes. So we thought we would start here. Let's give a definition though of what is public domain. I think people use some of these phrases without having always a clear definition. I know that I've been doing that, and now I'm much more careful and aware of what the definitions are. So works in the public domain are creative materials that are not protected by intellectual property laws, such as copyright, trademark, or patent laws. The public owns these works, not an individual author or artist. Anyone can use a public domain work without obtaining permission, but no one can own it, right? So there are 4 ways that works generally arrive in the public domain. So the first one is that the copyright has expired, and that is, according to today's date, anything prior to January 1st, 1923. So some of you that are working perhaps in history, that may apply to you, or art history may apply to you. The copyright owner failed to follow copyright renewal rules. And so it's up to the copyright holder to fill out all of the paperwork and to register the work with the appropriate offices. And if that doesn't happen, then something can pass to the public domain. Or the copyright owner deliberately placed it in the public domain, and this is known as dedication. And so if it says something in the work that you're looking at, and it has these words, something along this line, this work is dedicated to the public domain, then it's free for you to use. It's just problematic because it's generally not the case that somebody has added that to the work. So this third rule here is one that you want to be cautious about because generally most things are not designated as part of the public domain. And the last one is copyright law does not protect some kinds of work. So it doesn't protect the titles of books or movies, short phrases such as make my day, remember that one? Copyright protection also doesn't cover facts, ideas, or theories. These are all things that are free to use without authorization. And so looking back at that example of make my day, and there are tons others that you could probably think of in a moment's notice, all of those are considered part of the English language. And so they're common idioms, and they're not copyrightable. They're free for everyone to use. However, if a short phrase is used as an advertising slogan, then it's different. Okay, so you want to be aware of that. If you use, and maybe you wouldn't, but if you see used a similar phrase for the purpose of selling products or services to the slogan of a company, then there is a problem generally. So then we think about facts and theories, right? So-and-so researcher may propose a particular theory of something, right? So then that is not going to be copyrightable. However, the unique manner in which the fact or the theory is expressed may be protected. So for example, if a filmmaker created a movie about some sort of fact or theory, the specific way that they presented that idea in the movie, in the film, would be protected by copyright, right? Some guiding principles, and the second one is the one that I want you to focus on. Some guiding principles, though, the general rule of thumb, if there's a way to pay a license fee, it's better off to pay it. The process is not difficult. The fee for use of common text, photo, or artwork is about or under $200 per use, and in some cases it's free. However, those legal fees, if you violate the copyright law, could be 50 times or more than the $200 that you could have just paid, right? Kind of keep that in mind. And then in today's age, you know, a lot of people say, well, it's on the internet, so it must be public domain. And the reality here is almost always there are terms and conditions applicable to material that's downloaded, granting limited licenses in the copyright material, but just because it's posted online does not mean that it's in the public domain. Just because there's no copyright notice doesn't mean that it's in the public domain. So be real cautious about using works from the internet thinking that it's public domain. It's out there for everyone. Surely the whole public can see it. Yes, see it, but not necessarily use it. Some other guiding principles for works created after 1978. The rule is it's copyrighted throughout the life of the author plus 70 years, then it expires. If it's something before 1978, it's super complicated, and we recommend that you check with an expert. In fact, all of the things that we're telling you here today are not based on any sort of degree that we have in law. Kelly and I are doing our best to present the information to you as it was presented to us by somebody who was a copyright lawyer, but we will not be able to give any sorts of specific advice to anyone. And then works for hire, we'll talk about this in a minute, but generally this is an idea. If a company hires you to do something, then is it copyrightable, or what is the situation with that? Then it's 95 years from publication or 120 years from creation, the earlier of the two, and then that copyright expires. And so I think you're up next, Kelly. What do you do when you need to acquire permission? So you've determined it's not in the public domain and you need to acquire permission to use it. What do you do next? So Kelly, I'd like to take over from here.
So these, again, are Brittany Blanchard's slides and sets of knowledge, so I will probably read a little bit here because I'm not as familiar with some of the fine details. So using copyright materials, how do you acquire permission? So the process of acquiring permission from copyright owners to use their material. When do you not need this permission? As Karina mentioned, if it is in the public domain, and or if your use qualifies it as fair use. In general, acquiring permissions generally involves first determining if permission is needed, identifying the owner, identifying the rights. Actually, I'm going to step back to identifying the owner. There's a note here that Brittany wrote that I think is useful. So you can look at the copyright notice on any work, and it will probably, it should tell you if there are multiple owners or who the owner is, so you have a way to track down this information. The other one is identifying the rights needed. So we said earlier that there are 5 rights immediately owned by the author. Did we say that earlier?
I don't think we said that earlier, but go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that. She must have put that in there. Okay. So there are 5 rights that are immediately owned when you copyright something. You can reproduce it, modify, distribute, display, and perform. And you need to ask, if you're asking for permission to use something, you need to communicate to the owner what 1, 2, are you going to look for multiple rights or just one of those rights? Planning ahead for permission. The permission agreement will need to address exclusivity, term, and territory. Basically, you need to specify whether you will be the exclusive user of the work, the length of time with which you will use the work, and the geographic region where you can use the work. This can take up to 1 to 3 months, and the price can go up depending on how valuable the permission is. You need to be able to contact the owner and negotiate whether payment is required. Oftentimes, owners are very amenable to letting you use it once they know you've contacted them and what the use is going to be. And then it's always a good advice to get your permission in writing. Oral agreements are much harder to defend in court. So the next one. So fair use. Fair use is the right to use portions of copyrighted materials without permission for purposes of education, commentary, or parody. Educational purposes constitute this list here, used by educators at nonprofit educational institutions for purposes of teaching, a planned non-commercial study or investigation for the purposes of making a contribution to a field of knowledge, a non-paid presentation of research findings, at peer conferences, workshops, or seminars. The work needs to be transformative of the original work. And what Brittany writes here is that with education research, when taking portions of copyrighted work, ask yourself the following questions. Has the material you have taken from the original work been transformed by adding new expression or meaning? You need to transform the original work into something that is your own while still recognizing the base of your work, which is the author's work. For example, if someone were to take the Mona Lisa and transform it by adding a hat, a scarf, or jewelry, then the original Mona Lisa has been transformed. This is now a new painting, and perhaps it gives a commentary on society at that time or social structure. By changing it, the artist can claim fair use, especially because nobody will buy this new painting thinking they got the original Mona Lisa. Was value added to the original by creating new information, new aesthetics, new insights? Purposes such as scholarship, research, or education may also qualify as transformative uses because the work is the subject of review or commentary. Very fast. Fact specific and actually fairly no. Okay, defense to infringement. This is an important one. Fair use is a defense in court, but it is not something that is automatically granted. If you claim fair use, so if the owner says you violated their copyright and you claim fair use, you have to be able to defend your claim that it was fair use. So just understand that as you're looking at maybe some information that you would want to include in a thesis or a dissertation. Okay, using copyright materials infringement. This is the last of Brittany's slides, so hopefully I won't sound like I'm reading so much. If you are making a copy of any portion of copyrighted material, it is copyright infringement. There is no percentage for safe harbor. Using less than 10% of the copyrighted material equaling fair use is no longer accepted. That used to be something for years, even your professors thought they could use in their classrooms. That's no longer approved, and it's an infringement. The less you take, the more likely that your copying will be excused as a fair use. However, even if you take a small portion of a work, your copying will not be a fair use if the portion that's taken is the heart of the work. I'm wondering if we have a good example of what that might be, but that's key too. When something is, you're not taking 99% of the book or whatever.
But you're taking the one phrase where the person that was caught by the law made the confession, And that's the phrase or sentence that you're taking out of the book. It's one small little piece, but it's the most important piece of that book, right? You read the book to find out what that confession looked like and everything that led up to that confession, as an example,
As an
right?
example, yeah.
Right, and so the seminal portion of the work is in play there.
Okay, so copyright. It is automatic. It springs into effect as soon, as soon as you create your thesis or dissertation, you write it, you finish it, you put your name on it, the copyright is yours. You no longer really need to use the copyright symbol, but it is a good thing to include, just because copyright can be so confusing and can be quite complicated, and people think they have, I know people who think, or I've heard from people who think, oh, well, it doesn't have the icon, the little symbol on it, it's fine. That doesn't mean anything, So makes it, my suggestion when I get calls from students about their thesis or dissertation, I said just go ahead and throw in the copyright symbol on your dissertation. Okay, so registering. Filing, registering with the Copyright Office. So this is a question you get asked a lot, and or I get asked a lot. Should I, file with myself directly with the Office of Copyright or the ProQuest? And truly, the ProQuest route, they charge about $55, $60 where they will process or file your copyright papers on your behalf with the Office of Copyright. It's about the same as what it's going to cost you. And what we have heard from students is that have decided to just go the route of filing themselves with the Office of Copyright. It's a very antiquated system. It's not very intuitive. Your brains are fried by that point that you're thinking of, filing with the Office of Copyright. It may be something you might consider just to have ProQuest do it. Filing, however, is required. If you find that if you want to enforce your rights of copyright and sue somebody that's violated your copyright, you need to have filed your copyright papers with the Office of Copyright. And that, again, can take several months. If you wait and you say, well, I'll do it, and then in that time that you're waiting, somebody violates your copyright, you're working with, like I was saying, an antiquated system. It could take months before you're even in a place to then initiate legal action. Allows for recovery statutory. So with copyright, if it's filed, then you have the opportunity to recover any damages. The copyright holder is the responsible party for any action. So you have to know that if somebody's violated your copyright and you sue them, you will have to have that outpouring of financial pursuit or to sue them, and then it will be in court. And if the court decides that they owe you money, then you're going to get reimbursed. But you have to know that money's going to that pursuit of getting reimbursed is actually coming from you first. So here we go. 5 rights immediately owned by the author: reproduce, modify, distribute, display, and perform. Copyright, let me get to put the right thing here. 5 rights. So here's an example of this one. Copyright ownership is separate from the ownership of the work itself. For example, works of art may not be owned by a gallery or museum, but the way the gallery or the museum might coordinate or display those works of art would then be copyrightable by the museum. So they don't own the artwork, but they might own the displays. Again, the nuancing of copyright is what makes us all a little nervous about it. Rights, of these 5 rights, they can be unbundled or bundled, or so licensed separately. So you may give somebody one of the rights to use a piece of your work, but you don't give away the remaining 4. You may also just give away rights for a particular purpose, event, or duration of time. So there's lots of negotiating. The point is, I think you need to check You yourself, if you're looking to use some information, it's always best to go to the source. So find out about the copyright owner and what those terms might be and get the permission. Rights vest in the author, again, which is mean you own the copyright unless it is a work made for hire. Work made for hire are typically defined as employees acting in the course of employment. Works produced by an independent contractor where the contract expressly agrees that the work is a work made for hire. Something for all of you here at NAU, a requirement for graduation is that we do expect, or we do require that you have to put your thesis or dissertation into ProQuest, but you own the work. We don't own the copyright on that. Let me see here. Okay, I think we're done with that. And then embargoes. Embargoes are typically limited to 2 years. And embargoes are intended to be for things that are patentable, or if, for instance, with a creative writing master's student, if you signed an agreement with a commercial publishing house to publish your work in a year's time or 2 years. So you, as the student, you're kind of caught in this little spot where you have to upload it to ProQuest and Open Knowledge with NAU, but you don't want, either because of a patent or because of a possible contractual agreement with a commercial publishing house, for it to be available to everyone. You would put an embargo. The main thing to remember, though, is that if you were, ProQuest only sets these embargoes in 2-year limits. At the end of that 2 years, if you wanted to extend it, it is the student's responsibility to contact ProQuest and NAU Open Knowledge to extend out if you want to do it. But you would only be able to do another 2 years. So we have had some students that want an embargo for 10 years. They're responsible every 2 years to contact both ProQuest and NAU to maintain that. This is also where Brittany would be. She is with, as we said, with Klein Library. She is the main staff person that works with Open Knowledge. Here are just some definitions of what Open Knowledge is at NAU. It's our institutional repository. It gives NAU an institutional copy and showcases the graduate work that we do, that you all do, and that we do. It is separate from ProQuest. She writes one upload for thesis dissertation to ProQuest. A copy is later then sent to Open Knowledge. The main thing also to remember with where ProQuest and Open Knowledge are similar, if you you have to submit and upload your thesis or dissertation to ProQuest by that last day of term. So for fall, it's December 13th. You upload it, so you meet all the requirements. There are no other issues. You get your degree posted on your transcript. And then you contact me 2 weeks later and you say, oh my gosh, nobody caught this typo. We can have you withdraw, but we have to get confirmation from your committee that the only thing you are changing is something of a grammatical error, or if there was something to do with a margin that wasn't caught. If there's any content changes, those can't happen because that will have to be redefended. And so it's a very small change, but it's the same with work with Open Knowledge. Open access. So these terms, I know when I first started in this position, I got confused between what's Open Knowledge, what's Open Access, because ProQuest calls they offer another service, which I'll talk about later, but it's very similar. Open access basically means, though, the plain definition is that it's the full text is available for anybody to see at anywhere at no cost.
And by full text, it's the whole thesis or the whole dissertation, not just the abstract.
Right, an embargo. So the embargo will, because we still have to have some kind of archived notification of what the student's done. So the embargo will show the metadata. It'll show the title, it'll show your abstract, but it won't show anything else. And that will work. The embargo will work on the ProQuest side, Open Knowledge side. All right, here's my role. I'm back to it. Feel better. Okay, so where all of this information comes into play, so all this information you just had on copyright is the oral defense part 2 form. And what this form is, it serves 2 purposes. So I'll just back up a quick second. You defend. When you defend, your committee will fill out a form that is called the oral defense part 1 form. And that form is your pass-fail form. Did the student successfully pass or unfortunately fail their defense? If oftentimes noted on that form is where your committee will list the revisions. If they have any revisions that they want to see made to your dissertation or your thesis, they're going to typically list it there. What you do then is you make all those revisions, you resubmit your thesis or dissertation to your committee. They will, if they approve of the revisions and they say, yes, this is John Doe's final version, this is the version that will get uploaded to ProQuest, they will sign the oral defense part 2 form. So this form serves the 2 purposes. 1, to verify and approve of all revisions, and then all the things we've just been talking about. This is when your professor will sit with you or your chair and go over, do you want ProQuest to file on your behalf? Do you want an embargo? And so there are 4 selections. We're just going to go through them very quickly. So the first one is the open access option. So you can deposit with open knowledge at NAU. None of this, if you do traditional, so NAU doesn't charge anything to archive your thesis or dissertation, nor does ProQuest. The ProQuest's only charge, there are 2 charges, and they're really for services, so only if you opt for them, which is 1, file papers to the Office of Copyright on your behalf, or make it accessible to yet another platform that they have. So again, what is open access? A book, article, thesis, or dissertation is provided digitally online, free of charge, and free of most copyright licensing restriction. This gives you the benefit that it gives you. Some of them is, widest distribution, increasing the reach of your research to others. ProQuest provides this access for a fee, that Open Access Plus, and that at last I looked was about $100. It's not required. It's just if you think you want the maximum amount of global audience to access your work, this might be of interest to you. And also to know with ProQuest, only institutions or individuals that have a subscription to ProQuest can actually view your work. If you do the Open Access Plus, then that puts your work into another platform, yes?
And so for people that, or for institutions that do have access to ProQuest, is your full thesis available to them at that point?
Yes, if you do not have an embargo on it, your full thesis will be available.
And so it's just to people or institutions that don't have access to ProQuest, and they can also access it if it's on open access.
Yes. Okay, so the second is choosing an embargo. As we mentioned, typically that's only done in 1 or 2 years max. We do give you the option D, more than 2 years, and you can indicate, that's just for your reference. If you put in 10 years or 15 or 30 years, we don't manage the maintenance of that. Again, you all have to manage that. So I don't know if you want to just take a quick read over this. I don't know if I need to.
Yeah, go over that. But I think the reason why there's a choice D is you're saying, well, why would NAU put a choice D on if ProQuest only does 2 years? The idea here would be that you would have the conversation with somebody who is a little bit more along in their career, has a little bit more experience, to be able to give you advice, that's your committee chair, as to whether the work that you've accomplished in your degree here is something that you put an embargo on. It's not necessarily that this form triggers action on the graduate college, but rather it's a way for you to have a conversation with that chairperson and be able to say, oh, yeah, this is really cutting edge work. I want to make sure that I'm going to have this embargo for 100 years, whatever, but know that you still have to keep up with making it happen. This is just a conversation starter.
Yes, this is just a, yes. That's exactly it. So again, real briefly, an embargo is a period of time during which access to a specific article or publication is restricted. If your thesis or dissertation contains patentable, publishable, or sensitive material, you may wish to place a temporary embargo. ProQuest and Open Knowledge only allow for your abstract and metadata to be viewed if an embargo has been placed. ProQuest only allows embargoes in 2-year increments. As Associate Dean Collentine said, the student is responsible for maintaining it. So you can do 10, but at the end of 2 years, you got to place another 2, and then another 2, and another 2. Oral Defense Part 2 form copyright registration selection. So this one is if you do not want ProQuest to register your copyright, then you would choose A, student self-registers copyright, and then it's left to you to handle at any point in time that you want to with the Office of Copyright. You would choose, again, this isn't anything that you're going to fill out. I'm going to get the form and I'm going to contact ProQuest with. This is more of a working document for you all for you and your chair to go down and decide on what you would like to do, what your selections are. What is copyright registration? Though copyright is automatically granted to the author of the thesis or dissertation, filing with the U.S. Office of Copyright offers more formal protection. You can self-register with the U.S. Office of Copyright for about the same fee as ProQuest, as I mentioned earlier. And why file? Should someone violate your copyright, you can initiate legal action quickly. The last of the items that are presented to you on the Oral Defense Part 2 form is the issue of bound copies. Department, it's best just to check with your department to see if they would like a copy, an actual hard copy, bound copy of your dissertation or thesis. That's going to be department selected. That's not something we as a university or the graduate college select. But you do need to decide if your department wants 1 or 2 bound copies, you need to confirm who's going to pay for that. Often, I can't say, I don't know, I really don't know this part of it, if departments pay or if
It's normally the student.
the student pays.
Right. And it could be because the department has maybe a conference room where they have bookshelves with all of the theses and dissertations of their students, and that's their collection, and they can then say, these are the ones that our students have done in the past several years, or since this program started, or whatever the case may be. So it may be the case that they want to have a bound copy, which just means that it's printed and then it has like some sort of binding on it to hold all the pages together. You're not turning in a box of just newspapers, right? They've done something with it like at FedEx or the UPS store, right, a print shop. And so they may want to have that, but generally it is the student that pays for it, but you have to ask. Maybe they require that as a programmatic requirement. You better know, and then you'll know this piece. Oh, I got to get this, right? And I think Kelly's got a couple more details on, we don't know, go back 1 slide. We don't do any, go ahead 1, I think. There. So we don't do anything with any bound copies. So don't send them to us because we can't take them to a department. We can't send them via campus mail to, the chair or anything like that. It would be you that would want to do that. And so keep that in mind if you're not from this area, or you're not from Arizona, and you're required to have these bound copies, just be sure that it's up to you to get it to the right place, or you leave flex staff. We're not, unfortunately, able to handle any sort of things with bound copies.
And brings up a good point too, just to clarify how NAU and ProQuest merge, what is our relationship. And so we have a contract with ProQuest to use them as archiving and displaying the research and work of our graduate students. So I'm really only working with ProQuest up to the time that you upload your thesis or dissertation. Everything else to do with bound copies, personal financial information, shipping, things of that nature, then move over to the ProQuest side of the house. So they'll handle those issues. I really only look at it for formatting and making certain that you've uploaded and there aren't any issues with the dissertation and thesis in its final form before it moves over into publishing. So real quick, we're going to just go just a couple more slides. We're going to go through the dissertation, the doctoral track, which then kind of leads into a little bit of the thesis. So for some of you, I don't know if you're in your year or second year, but when do you form your committee? And as I said, there is no hard timeline, but it is suggested that you do it within the first year, definitely by the end of the second year. The main thing to remember is that you cannot defend your prospectus until you've had your dissertation committee approved. So that the approval of the dissertation committee has to happen before your prospectus defense. You submit the dissertation committee form to me, which is etd@nau.edu. All of our forms are found on the Graduate College website. Always go to the website to download the most current form, and that there's nothing, then you'll be reassured that nothing is outdated, and I don't have to, contact you for something that is on a new form.
And we do make changes twice a year. So it really is important. Don't get the form your committee chair, don't get it from a student that you know that graduated last year. Really do go to the website for all the forms, this one and all of them.
I receive, you fill out your dissertation committee and all of the supplemental material that's required to come along with it. I evaluate it. If there's nothing missing or needed, then we approve it and we send out an official memo to you and to your committee as well as your department admin. Step 2 is applying for candidacy. This happens in a student's career when they have finished all of their coursework. ABD means all but dissertation. So you're at that point where you finished all your coursework, you're really just working on your dissertation. You've completed all residency requirements. If there was a language or research requirement, you've passed your comp exams, you successfully defended your prospectus. So when you go to the website and you download the candidacy application, all these things are on there, and you usually work with your department admin, and typically he or she will help to compile that information, then scan it over to me. Same thing happens where if I get all that information, I get the whole packet, I evaluate it, I tally, and if everything looks great, then I send out on the dean's behalf an official memo saying that candidacy has been conferred. And we do not, this applies well in advance of your graduating semester, we do not allow for candidacy to be conferred in the semester that you're graduating. It's too tight of a timeline, and there may sometimes be an extenuating circumstance that would warrant that kind of a tight push, but we don't put that in your timeline. Get it done well before your last term. Then for doc students, the defense scheduling form, that's yet another form found on our website. These have deadlines or dates associated with them because we, the dean, attend every dissertation defense, and so we have the university graduate committee at the university here, and those representatives will sit in on her behalf. They are not voting members, so they won't vote on whether, on your exam. However, they can ask questions, and they're really there to support you and to support or to keep our levels of protocol and process intact, and that the defenses are going to protocol, basically. So what this says is that I need to get that defense form at least, I can get it 3 and 4 weeks in advance, which would be great, but I need to get it at least 10 business days prior to your defense date so that I can go track down and secure to sit in on your defense. And then doctoral defenses are not permitted in the last 2 weeks of term, and we do that in support of you all because the last 2 weeks of term, as you all know, are crazy. The faculty that are in your committee have a lot of other hats they're wearing at that time, and if you have a bunch of revisions, it can be hard to get their feedback in a timely manner. So we want to give you as much time as we can to get that all coordinated. As far as masters go, master's students, we aren't involved in the forming of thesis committees or in the scheduling of defenses. So that's all within your respective departments. So you will want to speak with your department admin or your committee chairs as how how those processes work. However, there's another 10-day date, which also applies to doc students.
To master students.
But as well to masters and docs. Submit your thesis for format check. The doc students need to submit their dissertations for format as well 10 days prior to the defense date. So I'm the one that looks at that, and that's basically just, we have so many different programs. They're fairly loose format requirements that we have, but I'll be looking at margins, pagination, tables. Is there any orphan text? Is there something going on? But I need, especially as we get into the last month, 6 weeks of school, I really do need every one of those days to make my way through everybody's thesis and dissertations. I wish I could read them because there's some amazing ones coming through. Homestretch for graduating students. This is something we put together. It's on our website as well, so you can find it there. It's just a quick synopsis of what has to happen in your last semester. You need to, again, submit defense scheduling form, doc students 10 days prior to your defense. Doctoral and thesis students, first thing, make certain you've applied for graduation. That everything that Megan talked about, that's done. You submit your dissertation and thesis for format check. The committee chairs need to submit the oral defense part 1 form, which is that form that is the notification of a successful pass or fail of a defense. Has to come to me within 48 hours of the defense. It lists your required revisions. Student resubmits revised documents to the committee. If everything's approved, the chair submits the oral defense part 2 form to me. And then this form notes the 4 selections that we talked about. After receiving a copy of the part 2 form, which you should get a copy because it'll help you when you're going on to ProQuest, it'll be a good reminder of what you selected or what you talked with your chair about. After you receive that part 2 form, that's your trigger to upload your thesis or dissertation to ProQuest. In order to graduate, the graduate must have both oral defense forms on file, and the final thesis or dissertation must be uploaded to ProQuest by end of business day on the last day of term. And one last little note here in red for any PhD. This is not EDT. These are PhD students. On the ProQuest website, there's a little link to the survey of earned doctorates. That is a requirement for graduation. It takes 10 minutes to fill out, but it is a requirement. Yes?
I still can't access that survey.
Are you Megan?
I'm Megan, yeah.
Hi, Megan.
Hi. Thank you for your work on it. But I'm wondering if it's because I haven't uploaded that part 2 form, it'll be in at the end of the week. Would that have prevented?
No, and actually, I got your email right before we were getting ready to come here. So the ProQuest guy told me that he had updated it. I can go in and see if I can do it. I was just getting ready for this presentation. But I'll look at it again tomorrow. Okay. But you don't need, I mean, you did it a little out of sync, but it's not a problem. But typically it should be that, you know, oral defense form is first because that is the notification, the official notification that you passed your defense. You use your revisions, you get the oral defense part 2 form, you make your selections, and then you upload to ProQuest. But the fact that you're uploading now is not a problem.
But
other than that you can't reach this or get to this link.
And then do I upload both of those forms, 1 and 2, or do those go to ProQuest?
No, those just come
Okay.
to me, and
Okay.
those don't go to ProQuest. ProQuest only gets your dissertation or your thesis.
Okay.
So these are important dates for fall and spring. The last day to hold a dissertation defense this year is November 27th. Please be aware that that is the Wednesday before Thanksgiving Thursday. That's going to be a really short week, so you might not want to push it up to that last date, but that's it. I just want to let you know that's the last day to hold a dissertation defense. For thesis defenses, the last day is December 6th, so no defenses for master's students in the last week of school. 12/13 is the last day of terms. That means everything has to be in that we just talked about. And then if some of you are looking to spring, these are the dates that you'll want to make note of for last day to hold a dissertation defense or thesis defense in spring 20. And On our website, we also have some very helpful links to some information that can answer some questions. Most importantly is this ProQuest one. If you just go to this link, it'll take you straight to the ProQuest website. And before you can upload anything, you have to create a personal file. There's also some great information on another drop-down link with copyright that can help you answer some questions if we haven't been able to answer some of your questions. And before we go on to the last slide, because it'll take us off this topic.
But can you project it? while you
Sure,
take
sure.
questions?
Is there anything, does anybody have any questions for all this information we just threw at you? Yes.
Quick question, for that format check that's done 10 days prior to your defense, is that like the final form of that thesis? Or can we still do the changes?
Oh, that's a good question. No, that's just for format. So what we're hoping to do by getting it prior to your defense date is just that you're going into your defense with it formatted correctly. You're obviously going to make content
Yeah.
changes most likely.
Yeah.
But this is just so that there's uniformity and consistency and things you paid attention. Let me go back one. There's a, I don't know if it's on this slide. HT information thesis. It's not on this slide. There's another one on our website that is formatting, and it's called the format checklist, and it will help you walk through, you need a 1-inch margin on all sides. You need Roman numeration for this, Arabic numeration for that kind of thing. So that's more just to support you to make certain your paper is looking good.
Because then if you have to work a paragraph, your committee says, oh, add an example here, it's fine because you've already done everything.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Any other questions at all? No, pretty clear? Well, then we've got all these other wonderful events coming your way that you might want to participate in. Would you like to say anything about any of them?
Yeah, this is going to be a fantastic one. It's got a catered lunch Friday, November 15th over at HLC. And then we've got these parts that have to do with your career. And so the finances before, during, and after graduate school. And we're hoping to get somebody in with dealing with stress, working on that piece, preparing for your career. So who needs a resume and who needs a CV? It depends a little bit on what field you're going into. How do you select some professional development activities that go along with that to complement your resume or your CV? So that could say that you've completed this degree and that's all you did, or you've got some workshops you've attended, you've done some extracurricular things. How do you get all of that into your CV? How do you make selections and get it into? If you're on the side of teaching, how do you create a professional teaching portfolio that you could demonstrate at a job interview? And you can apply that to non-teaching fields as well, starting in living your career. So should you go into, if you're in the sciences, do you want to go into academia where you would become a professor, or do you want to go inside of industry where you would work for a company? And so some of those decisions and things to consider will be what they'll talk about there, as well as how to negotiate for the best salary. So that's a great tip, how to learn how to do that. And then some career planning. So all those questions that you see there. And then the last part will be communicating with professionals. So, how is it that you make a request to somebody to come in and see their lab or collaborate on a particular project? So on how to do that. And then the last piece will be on networking. So how do you go into a room, maybe a meet and greet or a happy hour at a conference that you've attended? How do you make the most of that time in terms of networking, right? You're not just drinking your glass of wine and then going back to your hotel room, but how can you use that time to network and build connections with other people? So we get somebody coming to talk about that. And so we hope you'll be able to attend that workshop on the 15th. If you have any questions or feedback for us, we're happy to take it. If you have any other questions that just really don't pertain to group that you want to ask us individually, you can. We would just ask that you make sure that you register using the little piece of paper that you found on your table, or by, it's just gone now. The slide that had that information is gone now, but you can use a little piece of paper. Thank you very much for coming and your attention and your questions. We hope this was useful for you. And again, if you have any other individualized questions, come on up and ask us. We'll be happy to help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm really sorry you're having the
Show you. Yeah, it's
problems with it. I don't understand.
Part of my central.
So when I